Welcome to the Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black podcast. I started this podcast to help my patients, their families, and listeners like you cut through all the noise, the complex, often false messages found all over the health and wellness industry, and to learn practical, evidence-based, real-world strategies that make achieving your health goals doable. My friends, you're in for a treat. Today's topic is 100% relevant. We're going to sift through a lot of the confusing messaging about sugar. You know, that thing that most of us have a love-hate relationship with? I mean, how bad is it really? Is it really as addictive as crack cocaine? Is it basically white poison? What about natural sweeteners like coconut sugar, agave, or even honey? Are they healthier than white table sugar? And what's the truth about high fructose corn syrup? I'm going to tell you the honest, evidence-based truth, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I want you to be able to make informed decisions that support not only your own health, but that of your family. I'm also going to tell you which natural sweetener is the healthiest and rank some of the most common ones. So be sure to listen to the entire episode. And do you know what would be the icing on the cake? If you could share this episode with at least one person who needs to hear it. Just one person you love whose health might benefit. Now, if you're a regular listener, you already know that I like to get the sciencey part out of the way first so everyone understands what I'm talking about. If you're a new listener, hey, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And heads up, I like to get the sciencey part out of the way first so everyone understands what I'm talking about. When we say sugar, when I use the word sugar, what does that mean? What am I talking about? Just go get your scissors and a brown paper bag. You need to cover your textbook because we're going back to middle school science class. In just everyday casual use, the word sugar usually refers to plain white table sugar, aka granulated sugar. The chemical name is sucrose. At the molecular level, it's made up of two carbohydrate molecules, glucose and fructose, bonded together in a 1-to-1 ratio, so 50% of each. That's an important point I want you to remember. It's going to show up on the quiz at the end of the episode. But here's the thing many people don't understand. Other forms of quote-unquote natural sugar, like honey, maple syrup, agave syrup, and even unnatural sugar, I guess you could call it unnatural high fructose corn syrup, are all basically variations on the same theme. Once they're digested, they end up as glucose and fructose in the bloodstream. So I guess that already answers one of the questions right off the bat. It does not matter what the package says when it comes to sugar. Your body doesn't care where it came from. Once digested, it's all pretty much the same stuff. Now, of course, there is some nuance here, and I'll go into a little more detail later in the episode. But at the fundamental biochemical level, just know that there's very little difference between the different types of sugar, regardless of whether it's in a quote-unquote natural, unprocessed state or altered in a food lab. All right, next question. Is sugar basically poison? Well, the short answer is yes, but also no. We need sugar. Glucose is used by almost every cell in your body, and it's the brain's preferred energy source. The hormone insulin helps shuttle it out of the blood and into the cells, things like muscle, liver, and the other cells where it's used for energy. And if we get more than we can use right away, the surplus can be stored as glycogen for when we need a quick boost. But we get into trouble when we consume much more than that because that excess is turned into triglycerides, aka fat, which not only ends up deposited under our skin, but worse, triglycerides are deposited into the cells of our muscle and our liver, leading to insulin resistance and metabolic diseases like diabetes and fatty liver disease. Repeated overconsumption of refined sugar, which, let's face it, happens 3 or more times a day, almost every day for many people eating the standard American diet, also overwhelms our metabolic machinery, those mitochondria. This is a concept known as energy toxicity. Go back and listen to my episode from season 2 about interpreting your lab results and my more recent interview with the cardiologist, Dr. Kelly Rathel, for a refresher on all of that. So that's glucose. We need it to survive, but not too much. What about fructose? Remember, I said that most sugar is a mix of glucose and fructose. Unlike glucose, fructose is metabolized almost entirely in the liver and doesn't require insulin for uptake. On the one hand, our bodies evolved to metabolize carbs found in foods, including fructose, the main sugar in fruit, hence the name. So when we eat, our liver can handle small amounts just fine. But just like glucose, when we consume large doses of fructose repeatedly, especially from things like juice, soda, and other sugar-sweetened drinks, the liver can't process it fast enough. What it can't use mostly gets turned into fat, just like glucose, but through a complex set of biochemical reactions that I'm not going to try to go into because, to be honest, I forgot most of them about 2 weeks after I took that exam in medical school, and I am not interested in relearning them. One of my med school professors used to call that academic bulimia, kind of binge and purge, and that is one of the truest statements I ever heard. But anyway, through a complex set of biochemical reactions, that excess fructose can result in higher levels of uric acid in the blood, and elevated uric acid causes stiffening of the blood vessels, sending your blood pressure up, and it leads to increased oxidative stress and inflammation, further increasing your risk of all the chronic diseases that are plaguing many of us. Uric acid is also the main cause of gout. So now you know why high fructose corn syrup gets such a bad rap. It's right in the name. High fructose. So thank goodness many products are removing it and replacing it with pure cane sugar or other more natural forms of sugar, right? Has to be healthier, right? Now we arrive at the myth-busting portion of the episode. Pop quiz. I told you there would be a quiz. What is the ratio of glucose to fructose in table sugar? That's right, 1-to-1 or 50-50, half and half. Good job. You got an A+. Do you want to know what the ratio is for high fructose corn syrup? 55-45. That's right, only a 5% difference. That difference is metabolically irrelevant. So if the difference is so slight, why do we call it high fructose corn syrup? It's because it wasn't developed to replace table sugar. It was developed to replace original corn syrup, which is pretty much all glucose and no fructose. They basically turned corn syrup into liquid table sugar. So now you know, replacing high fructose corn syrup with cane sugar does not make the product healthier. Honey, agave, coconut sugar, turbinado sugar, everything the advertisers want you to believe is healthier, same story. Added sugar is added sugar is added sugar. Your body cannot tell the difference. Now you might be thinking, hold up, Dr. Black, does that mean table sugar and corn syrup are healthier than, say, fruit, since fructose is the main sugar in fruit? The answer is decidedly 100% no. Despite what some internet influencers and low-carb diet pushers might claim, the risk from fructose, and actually glucose for that matter, is very clearly related to the sheer amount that the average person in the U.S. consumes. That's not seen with whole fruit intake. As with many things, you have to consider the whole package. What comes along with the sugar in the food you're eating? With whole fruit, you're getting some fructose, but also fiber, which slows digestion, giving you more time to use the sugar for energy. You know, I probably just need to change the name of this podcast to Eat More Fiber with Dr. Black. What do you think? Fruit also has polyphenols and other antioxidants and nutrients that have been shown time after time to be beneficial for your health. In fact, large population studies consistently show that fruit is protective, not harmful. And it turns out that these nutrients are bound up with the fiber. So when you process the fiber out to make juice or other ultra-processed foods, you're also removing a good amount of those antioxidants and vitamins. You also have to consider the amount. Have you ever heard the term, the dose makes the poison? Here's another pop quiz. What fruit has the highest amount of sugar per gram? Is it apples, bananas? What about tropical fruit? Mango, papaya? No, it's just grapes. Grapes have about 15 to 16 grams of sugar per 100 gram serving. That's about 20 average size grapes. So let's compare eating whole grapes to even just a small 8-ounce size glass of 100% no extra sugar added grape juice. You know, the healthy kind, right? That little 8-ounce glass of juice has a whopping 35 grams of sugar and none of the beneficial fiber. That's almost as much as the 12-ounce can of soda, which has 39 grams of sugar on average. In fact, ounce for ounce, the grape juice has more sugar. So when your pediatrician tells you that juice is basically the same thing as soda, now you know it's true. As I always say, it's better to eat your fruit than drink it. And while we're on the subject of the dose makes the poison, it's estimated that the average American consumes close to 70 pounds of added sugar every single year. It's over 100 pounds if you include naturally occurring sugar in fruit and milk. The number one source is sugar-sweetened beverages, followed by sweetened snacks and desserts. Compared to people who drink sugary beverages less than once a month, those drinking 1 or 2 per day had about a 14% higher risk of early death, and those who drank 2 or more per day had a whopping 21% higher risk. Now let's tackle another big question that comes up a lot. Is sugar really as addictive as crack cocaine? You hear this claim everywhere. I've even said it to my patients in the office. And there is a grain of truth to it, but the straightforward answer really is no. On the one hand, sugar does light up the brain's reward system by triggering dopamine release. Dopamine is often called the pleasure hormone, but that's not really accurate. Its main job is habit reinforcement. When early humans found a source of high-energy food, something like berries or honey, dopamine release signaled, remember where you found this and come back for more so you can survive. The modern-day version of this is remember that there are often donuts in the break room. Dopamine helps the brain remember what works. Everything that's new, novel, and pleasurable triggers a dopamine spike. Exercise, social connection, getting a bunch of likes on your post, and that cute cat video on TikTok. It all triggers dopamine release to keep you coming back for more. Refined sugar is especially good at this because it's fast and predictable. But the difference is this. Sugar is habit forming, not chemically addictive. True addiction includes loss of control, tolerance, meaning you need more to get the same effect, physiologic dependence, that's actual changes in the brain, and withdrawal when the substance is removed. Now, with sugar, people do report feeling out of control, and they often keep eating it despite the negative effect on their health. But there's no true tolerance, dependence, or withdrawal. Now, while cravings can be decidedly uncomfortable, they don't qualify as true withdrawal. Another important difference lies in the sheer amount of dopamine release triggered by drugs like cocaine, which basically flood your brain with dopamine. They cause a fast, supermassive dopamine surge while also blocking the brain's ability to clear it back out. In order to cope, your brain turns down the dial on its dopamine response by down-regulating receptors. You need more of the drug to get the same effect, and you feel much worse when the drug is gone because dopamine levels essentially crash, producing real physiologic withdrawal symptoms. When people cut back on refined sugar, they may truly feel irritable and crave more due to a temporary, much more subtle drop in dopamine signaling. The good news is this phase is usually short. For many people, the strongest sugar cravings last days to maybe a couple of weeks. They fade as that signaling rebalances, especially when blood sugar is kept stable and meals are well balanced. Here's a good technique to help you overcome sugar cravings. Ride them out like you would a wave. This is called urge surfing. Much like a wave, cravings will rise, they crest, and then they fade, all on their own. You can surf the craving by simply noticing its natural lifespan without either giving into it or fighting against it. So here's the bottom line. Yes, sugar and drugs activate dopamine release in the brain, but nope, it's not accurate to say sugar is as addictive as cocaine. Understanding that difference matters because it shifts the story from helpless to empowered. Habits can be unlearned and new, healthier habits can take their place. Go back a few episodes and listen to the one I did on how to create healthy habits if you need a refresher. So far, we've learned that most types of quote-unquote natural sugar are a mix of glucose and fructose and that they're all treated pretty much the same in the body. They're not crack cocaine. They're not evil in and of themselves, but the dose makes the poison, and the main factor driving the national health crisis is the downright absurd amount that we tend to consume every single day of our lives. If you're like me, after hearing all of this, you're ready to commit to getting refined sugar out of your diet as much as possible. But it's human nature to enjoy sweet treats, and there are times when you're going to want a dessert. And you should. Quality of life is an important factor in our overall health, and you will never hear me advocating for extreme restriction of anything, except, actual crack cocaine. I promised back at the start of the episode to tell you which natural sweetener is the healthiest, so let's rank the most common natural sweeteners so you can make an educated choice the next time you need to buy or make something sweet. I'm counting down the 10 most common types of sugar, but because they're so similar, I've grouped them into 4 categories: red, orange, yellow, and green. All right, starting with the red category, we have number 10, high fructose corn syrup, highly processed, usually liquid, no fiber, and very easy to overconsume. Historically, it's the main sweetener in soda and other ultra-processed foods, although because of its bad reputation, it is being removed from many products and switched with number 9, pure cane sugar. Now you know there's essentially no difference between pure cane sugar and high fructose corn syrup. Number 8 is brown sugar, which is basically white sugar with a little molasses added to give it its distinctive color and caramel flavor. Metabolically speaking, no meaningful difference. Moving on to the orange category, we have number 7, turbinado or demerara sugar, which are also called raw sugars. Proponents of these claim that they're healthier because they're slightly less refined, but they're still just sucrose, aka table sugar, with no fiber or metabolic advantage. Number 6 is coconut and palm sugar. These are marketed as healthier because they do contain some trace minerals, but the amount is negligible. The yellow category is sweeteners that are minimally processed. We've got number 5, honey. This contains small amounts of enzymes and antioxidants, but it's still about 80% sugar. The other 20% is mostly water. And number 4, maple syrup. It's plant-based and contains some polyphenols, but again, it's still a concentrated liquid sugar. Are you ready to find out which sweetener is in the green category? Something you can use in baking, in your oatmeal, your coffee, or even just as an occasional snack? Many of you already know what it is. It's dates. Dates are a whole food. They're very sweet and easy to use in whatever you need to sweeten. Coming in at number 3, date syrup. This is made by boiling the dates, and then you strain out the remaining solids. The syrup that you have left retains some of the nutrients, but, of course, most of the fiber has been removed by the filtering. Also, a liquid form means faster absorption, so this is closer to maple syrup. I probably should have put it in the yellow group. Number 2 is date paste. This is made by blending the whole dates with just a little bit of water to make a paste consistency. You keep all of the fiber, and that means slower absorption, and you get a better metabolic profile. You can even find or make date powder. Now, this is basically dried and ground dates, and it can be used as a replacement for granulated sugar in baking. And the number 1, least unhealthy, should I say, or healthiest sugar source is just whole pitted dates. You don't have to do anything to them. You can chop them up and add them to your oatmeal, add them to your granola, trail mix. I drop a few in the blender when I'm making chia pudding or my chocolate tofu pudding. You get the whole food form with the fiber. They're delicious, they're widely available, easy to use. If you're interested in learning more about how to use dates to make really delicious and indulgent desserts, I recommend a cookbook by Chef AJ. It's called Sweet Indulgence. I put the link in the show notes along with a link to her snickerdoodle cookie recipe. It has just 4 ingredients. It's incredibly easy, and it's a delicious treat for any occasion that you need one. Now, of course, you can use other fruit as natural sweeteners, right? Applesauce, mashed bananas, mango, berries. All of these can be added to baked goods to add moisture and sweetness, along with the added benefit of the fiber, the polyphenols, and all the other nutrients that are found in brightly colored fruit. I hope you now have a better understanding of the truth about refined sugar. It's human nature to seek out and crave sweetness. It's not a moral failing. But as I've said several times in this episode, the dose makes the poison. In our modern day society, we're just getting way too much, and your body's metabolic machinery can't handle it. The excess gets turned directly into triglycerides, aka fat, which is deposited in the cells of your muscles and your liver, where it causes insulin resistance, diabetes, and fatty liver disease. And the rates of all of these things are rising dramatically. It causes chronic inflammation, and it raises your risk of premature death. Now you won't fall for the marketing hype because you know that replacing high fructose corn syrup with, quote, natural sweeteners like pure cane sugar, turbinado, or even maple syrup makes little to no difference to your body. Most guidelines recommend keeping added sugar under about 10% of calories, but I don't necessarily think you need to track that. If you focus on just whole fruit, limiting processed carbs, and choosing products with the lowest added sugar, you'll naturally move in the right direction without having to track all of your food. When the occasion does call for dessert, or maybe you just want to indulge, try using dates. You get the intense sweet flavor you're craving in a whole food form that keeps the beneficial fiber. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's this. Sugar isn't something to fear, but it is something to be thoughtful about. When sweetness comes packaged with fiber and nutrients, your body knows exactly what to do with it. When it shows up isolated and in large, rapidly digested quantities, that's when the problems start. Understanding the science-backed truth empowers you to eat in a way that protects your health without restriction or guilt. In my next episode, I'm continuing to focus on carbs. I'm moving from sugar to other often demonized high-carb foods. You'll learn ways to hack your metabolism, to smooth out blood sugar spikes and avoid that post-carb crash, and tweak even the starchiest foods to make them healthier. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to eat your greens. Please be aware that this podcast provides general health information about nutrition and feeding of infants and children and is meant for educational purposes only. It's not intended to replace the important relationship between a parent, child, and pediatrician. If you have concerns about your child's nutrition, health, or growth, please consult your doctor.